Hello. We're trying something new, as you can see with the background. We are new to all this, and it will get better as time goes on. You are, of course, watching Headlocks and Headphones, and over the next couple of weeks, we do have some new ideas that are going to be coming across, hopefully, very well on YouTube. However, in the meantime, we are going to be talking about the reason that we're here, which, of course, is wrestling. If you are a wrestling fan, hopefully you're going to be intrigued by everything that's happening this week. One of the interesting things that we do have to talk about, of course, which is quite political, and we do want to try and stay away from being political on this page, because to be honest, I study politics. I'm way to go into fourth year at university, and the last thing I want to do is spend my life talking about politics. However, let's talk about politics for a second. Black Lives Matter is something that is going to be all over the media. It's not going to disappear for the next couple of weeks. People are breaking lockdown because they feel so passionate about what's going on, and quite rightly so. I've had conversations with various people, and I have had a few people who've said, well, Martin, you're a bit controversial. What's your take? Do you know what my take is? Most of the people I see online talking about it are white people who have no idea the struggle that a black person or a person, any other non-white person goes through. So any comment I make is going to be exactly the same as all of those. It's going to be uneducated and uninformed. So I'm not going to make any comments about whether I think the rioters are justified. I'm not going to make any comments about whether I think that the Black Lives Matter movement is racist, because it's a pointless, futile exercise. I'm just not going to do it. If only Hulk Hogan had done the same. Hulk Hogan banned from all AEW shows because he has labelled the animals who are partaking in these riots as something that needs to be stopped. And you know what? As a person who has already had to apologise to people for racist comments, calling people animals when race is a factor, I mean, come on. I'm rubbing my head because I can't understand why you would want to do that. Every time I rub my head, I notice the green screen comes into play. But we'll ignore that. More importantly, don't be a dumbass during times like this. Don't be like Hulk Hogan. Don't start making comments like calling rioters animals. If you disagree with them rioting, that's fine. Say you disagree with them rioting, but don't use terms that can be used in a racial and negative way. I wish we could stop at Hulk Hogan, but let's look at another veteran, somebody who hasn't been around the wrestling business for a while, but Tammy Lynn Sitch, better known as Sunny to all of us. She's actually went out and been on her Twitter talking about the fact that, you know, white power, and she thinks that Donald Trump's doing a great job, and she's got a habit of saying things to get a reaction. She's got an OnlyFans account that she's trying to promote, so you can go and buy nudes of her if you want to. Why would you want to when you can go and watch her poo all over PornTube? Pornhub, RedTube. Sorry, I know way too many porn sites. I'm going to stop talking about them. Anyway, let's talk about some of the things that are actually good and happening in wrestling. Now, we do have the shows to talk about later on. We're going to talk about SmackDown briefly, Raw, and then we're going to do a little bit about AEW, but there is something that I do want to talk about in quite a bit of detail about NXT. We are, of course, heading to the In Your House pay-per-view, so that's going to be quite interesting. But what I do want to talk about is the news that's happening in wrestling right now. Now, if you're paying attention, that's absolutely great. If you're not, hopefully I'll be able to fill you in on some of the stuff that is happening. Now, WWE do have talent showing up for shows so that they can actually be audience members. It has come out in recent days that they're not being tested, despite claims to the contrary. Now, AEW are testing talent. They are making sure that they're getting the temperatures taken. They're getting tested. And that's the important part, tested. Whereas the WWE talent showing up to be the audience are simply being asked if they have a bad temperature or anything like that. So certainly one of the drawbacks right now is WWE really do need to step up their testing program. Certainly if they plan on having somebody like Roman Reigns return, they're going to need to test their talent, because without testing, you have no idea who's got it. You can't rely on the fact that somebody has a temperature. People can be asymptomatic and pass it on to countless others, and particularly in a closed environment, these talents need to be tested because they're going to infect however many people, particularly with America's lockdown being a little bit, again, I'm trying not to get too political, but America's lockdown's a little bit more lax than ours here in the United Kingdom. So it's interesting to see exactly how much of a difference is happening over there. Their death toll is quite high, and obviously WWE don't want to be seen as the epicenter of any of this, especially going forward. Now, let's get away from some of the negativity of coronavirus. Not that there's positives, but one of the nice things that has happened recently is Tony Storm and Juice Robinson, the New Japan Pro Wrestling star, have actually begun dating. Apparently, it started before the lockdown, and there have been pictures posted of the two of them together. Juice Robinson was in NXT. He was one of the guys who decided to invest in himself, and he walked away and went to Japan and has made quite a good career for himself. So that's quite a good thing to see that people are getting their happiness, and that's really important. Now, earlier on today, when I was looking up some of the stuff that we could talk about, what I did look and find was the fact that Adam Cole's contract is up in the autumn. Adam Cole potentially heading to AEW. That has already been denied, and there are rumors that he signed a 3-year contract last year. Now, either way, these rumors started simply because Britt Baker, his partner, is in AEW, and he is friends with the Jacksons and several others. So, from what I can see, these rumors aren't going to go away unless AEW does, or unless Adam Cole just goes to AEW. Because he's friends with them, he does go to their shows when they don't conflict with WWE shows. And what's wrong with that? That I personally think, as long as he doesn't appear on screen on an AEW show, there's nothing wrong with him showing up. And you know what? If he appears and they list him as the NXT World Champion, or when he gets called up to Raw or SmackDown, he is listed as insert whatever brand he's on, then great. That promotes Adam Cole to that audience. Why would anybody be unhappy? If you are unhappy, you probably think it's a good idea that WCW closed the gate of their show to prevent DX coming in, because do you know what? Don't know about you, but if I heard that DX was on Nitro back in the day, I'm going to watch Nitro. I'm not watching Raw. And that sometimes is where people in the wrestling business or wrestling fans get a little bit confused. It's not always about protecting your brand. Sometimes you can go out, be a little bit risky, and put your brand over. Now, another story that's been refuted in recent days has been the story about Tommaso Ciampa. Apparently, Ciampa was not keen on a full-time roster push, which meant that he didn't want to be called up to Raw or SmackDown. He has since stated, of course, these comments were actually made in light of him just returning from neck surgery. He didn't feel 100% and certainly didn't feel like he was in a position to be able to go into a full-time schedule. Perhaps he is now a little bit better off and can make that full-time schedule, which would be great. I think Tommaso Ciampa is somebody who would be very good on the full-time roster. Now, there is one thing that if you are watching AEW, hopefully it is coming across to you. It's a slightly different product to WWE. If you watch this week's AEW, which I will mention briefly later on, Cody Rhodes does bleed during his match with Jungle Boy. Now, Jimmy Corderas, former WWE referee, did have a little comment to make. Now, I'm going to try and I'll quote it all so that you can make up your own mind. I'm not going to misquote him or say part of it. So, are you ready for this? AEW Dynamite last night, and I can go on and on about the refereeing and the lack of logic and the way they distract the referees, being uncreative and brutal, burying the referees. But there was something else that happened last night. Cody Rhodes hard weighing himself and getting blood, getting sympathy upon himself in his match against Jungle Boy. Yes, I understand the goal was to get Jungle Boy to the next level, elevate him even though he's going to lose the match. And that was very possible to do without the use of blood. We have to think about the times we're in right now. Yes, we want to evolve pro wrestling. Yes, we want it to get better. We want to be creative and think outside the box. But the one thing we shouldn't be thinking about is the use of blood. Yes, it ain't ballet. Accidents happen. But this was no accident. It was intentional. We're living in pandemic times. Blood is a no-no, plain and simple. And this is one critique I've always had about AEW. Sometimes they do things even though they make no sense. Sometimes logic isn't there in how they process things. Now, I made this comment last week when we had JJ Andrews on as a guest. I made the comment that AEW were meant to be different. The ranking system is meant to be important. Now, if you watch Botchamania this week, episode 412, they actually discuss the fact that it's not different. They can't even get the win-loss records right. But let's ignore that, because you know what? Although they advertise the wins and losses and the data and statistics being important, Tony Khan himself runs a company that deals with those things. We have what was meant to be a different style of presentation, but it's not. What we actually have, again, if you tune into Dynamite at any point, you'll see bad camera angles, poor sound quality, you'll see things being messed up, and everybody says, oh, well, you know what, it doesn't really matter because, you know, they're a new company, they're less than a year old. You have to go and look at the production team that they have, the production team who have years of experience through TNA, through WCW. More than one person involved in the overall production were involved in WCW. Even if you just look at the announce team, who still can't get it right. We're this far down the line, and we've been through so many iterations of that announce team with Alex Marvez and Taz, that we're at a point where at some point you have to just say, do you know what? JR's making mistakes. For whatever reason, we won't go into that, but for whatever reason, JR's making mistakes. Tony Schiavone is clearly getting excited about wrestling again, and that's a great thing. I just don't think the masked dude cuts it as a commentator, and people can disagree with me, and they probably will, and that's fine because that's what wrestling's about. We're allowed to have opinions. But just remember, if you're in any doubt about whether AEW is different to WWE, one of the things that Cody Rhodes said at the start was that rankings would be important. And there is literally no point in having somebody return from injury and suddenly be number one contender. There's no point in having somebody debut and suddenly be number one contender. Yet they've done both of those things. Now, key example that's happened in the past couple of weeks, Brian Cage, his debut in the company, he wins a match for a future title shot at Fyter Fest. So that is one of their big shows, and he's getting a title shot already. What's the explanation for this? Well, apparently there isn't one, because although they're different to WWE, apparently they're exactly the same as WWE. Now, when it comes to wrestling, I am very passionate about wrestling. If you want to join us, Headlocks and Headphones, we're more than happy to have everybody, and I mean everybody that wants to join in on the show. Coming up after a short little break for me will be SmackDown, Raw, AEW. I'm going to try and do them in as quick a way as I possibly can, because today was meant to be a three-way episode. Now, what was going to happen was we were going to have JJ, who you've already seen getting interviewed by me and you've seen on last week's show. He was going to be joined by somebody called Stuart Murphy. At the last second, Stuart Murphy pulled out, something which frustrating when you're trying to produce a show every week, but at the same time, the show must go on. But that means a lot of the things that I did have planned for this week, a lot of the pieces that we were going to do are not there. We can't do them. We're just going to keep them for a different week. That does mean a slightly shorter episode than we had planned. However, we are still going to talk about the main features of this week, and we are going to talk about some things that hopefully are entertaining for you. Now, I know that means listening to my voice a little bit more than you probably are used to, but it's better to have something to talk about. Now, we're still in lockdown, and that's, for me, what's important. Getting me through this is getting to talk about wrestling, getting to talk with my friends, getting to talk with my producer, and getting to enjoy wrestling. I spent 8 weeks where I didn't tune into very much of the live stuff. I would flick through Raw at best. Sometimes I just read what was happening. And that's why we did a series of lockdown specials. But if you are wanting to get involved, or if you're just jaded, or you think a half-hour talk would be a good bit of fun to distract you, give us a shout, because you know what? I love talking about wrestling. My producer loves talking about wrestling, and the more the merrier. Headlocks and Headphones on Facebook. You can comment on this video on YouTube, and if you want, headlocksandheadphones@gmail.com. Give us a shout, because you know what? The last thing we want is for everybody to sit about and do nothing during all this lockdown nonsense. Let's get busy about wrestling, because that, for me, is what's keeping me busy. Well, folks, one of the things that obviously, if we're going to talk about wrestling, we have to talk about the TV shows. And that means, unfortunately, we have to talk about SmackDown from Friday. Now, we're going to give a lot more opinion about this later on, but I do want to mention some of the things that happened on SmackDown because for me, the opening segment was possibly the worst segment of TV I've seen in a long time. Now we have Britt Baker who had a bad interview. They happen. We've had bad matches. We've had missed spots. We've had things that just haven't come across very well, or perhaps the commentators haven't been able to explain segments very well. I don't know how you can actually improve what they did other than not doing it. Um, when I get mad, I tend to speak a lot clearer. I tend to try and drop the accent that I have, which is Aberdonian largely, because I want people to understand how important it is to me that we don't go down the route of talking about people and their addictions. Now, Road Warriors, Road Warriors are somebody who Hawk had his addiction used by Vince Russo back in the 90s. It was something that for me was in very bad taste, and that was what we opened with on SmackDown. We had, as the cameras opened, we had Elias being attended to by paramedics in the street after an accident. There was an open bottle of alcohol in the car that struck Elias, and paperwork saying it is Jeff Hardy's rental car. Now, this juxtaposition here, it's just ridiculous. Why would the paperwork be there for Jeff Hardy? Why would there be the open bottle of alcohol? And why would Hardy then be found in the bushes by the police, soaked in alcohol? Now, he was arrested after eyewitness reports, including one from Braun Strowman, that a man in a black hoodie was seen running from the scene. Elias was loaded into an ambulance, and Hardy was driven away by the police. Now, I've not seen anybody give this anything other than an F or 0 stars or 0 out of 5. It's horrible. It's one of those things that just doesn't make any sense. But what they did when they came back from the break was they had Adam Pearce tell wrestlers both men would not be competing. That's Elias and Jeff Hardy. And we would actually have AJ Styles pushed for a bye to face Daniel Bryan in the finals. But Bryan said they should face replacement opponents. Styles, of course, didn't like that idea. Sheamus and King Corbin pushed to get back in the tournament, but were shouted down by Jey Uso, Dolph Ziggler, and everyone else in the back. This led to a battle royal later on, which saw the winner facing Daniel Bryan later in the night for a shot at AJ Styles and the Intercontinental Championship. Of course, AJ Styles being drafted to SmackDown as part of this push to reinvigorate the Intercontinental title. With Sami Zayn stuck at home right now, it's one of those things where they needed somebody to have it that could add some value. AJ Styles, Daniel Bryan holding that belt is a really big deal. Why they have to mire this in all this bullshit around this storyline, I will never know. Why they do this, and literally as Elias is being put on a stretcher, they have Renee Young standing in front talking about it like she's a news reporter. For me, it's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen, and I've seen the gobbledygooker. I've seen the boogeyman. Now, Sheamus would go on to win the Battle Royal. It was a very good Battle Royal. Lacey Evans and Sonya Deville ended in a double countout. Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss hosted a New Day for a Tag Team Champions Summit edition of A Moment of Bliss, which was passable. Sasha Banks defeated Alexa Bliss by pinfall, obviously hyping up the fact that Backlash has a match with Sasha Banks and Bayley versus Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. Mandy Rose and Otis were shown hanging out by the pool. Again, another throwaway segment. We then saw the video package announcing Matt Riddle's move to SmackDown, where he was introduced by Kurt Angle, which, quite frankly, when they released Kurt Angle, I thought there's somebody who could be a very good shout to help get talent over. Not as a GM, I mean just, somebody like Riddle is somebody who would have had a great match with Kurt Angle back in his prime. So it was very good to see Kurt Angle being used to introduce him. I certainly think that Matt Riddle is going to do very well on SmackDown. There's going to be a lot of changes that happen in the next wee while for the Super King of Bros as he's on a full-time schedule. I say full-time schedule. Obviously, that's pending things going back to normal. We then saw Daniel Bryan defeat Sheamus via pinfall, and that sees Daniel Bryan versus AJ Styles to crown the Intercontinental Champion. Now, for me, that is a main event match anywhere you see AJ Styles versus Daniel Bryan. These are two guys who led Ring of Honor quite well in the early 2000s, and these are guys who've done their damnedest to be as good as they possibly can. We did see the end of the show though, which saw Jeff Hardy make his return after WWE announced that he was found to have not been under the influence of alcohol, which means essentially the whole thing was just a stupid waste of time. That's probably the best way to put it. For me, SmackDown has been one of those very, very weak shows. We did have Shorty G defeat Cesaro by pinfall, which was quite interesting a couple of weeks ago. And that's one of those things you kind of want to see. You want to see somebody who's going out of their way to have good matches. Just now, SmackDown, however, is not great. The Mandy Notice thing, everybody else seems to like it. I don't. So what I do want to see is SmackDown change. But the problem is that SmackDown's had so many changes. They brought Eric Bischoff in, then they fired him, then they brought Bruce Pritchard in. But at the same time, the writing team has largely been the same. Chris DeJoseph, who was the fat, oily stripper guy who appeared with DX and Sandman and ECW, he basically went out of his way to try and make SmackDown a little bit different. He was one of the writers on Lucha Underground. He was involved in MLW. Here's a guy, unfortunately, I just don't think was good for the SmackDown brand. Now, we leave behind the negativity of SmackDown and we move to talking about Raw. There was quite a lot of good stuff on Raw. When I say quite a lot of good stuff, there's maybe 2 or 3 things that I really did enjoy. Now, we did see the opening of Seth Rollins' retirement ceremony for Rey Mysterio, which had Aleister Black run in and try to get some revenge for Rey Mysterio. We saw Aleister Black get the win. Apollo Crews versus Kevin Owens, which basically, to explain, Apollo Crews said that he wanted his first title defense to be against Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens said, well, this is just a pity match that you're giving me. And Owens, basically, when he was told by Apollo Crews, no, this is about respect, he said, absolutely. If it's about respect, then yes, I accept. But just realized it's going to be the shortest US title reign ever. But it was interrupted by Andrade and Angel Garza, which saw an impromptu tag match. Get used to them because they happen on NXT as well this week. But we did go to the Viking Raiders and the Street Profits. For me, one of those segments that it should be awful. We should be looking at this and we should be criticizing it. And we should be saying, we don't want to see this kind of stuff. It's goofy, it's stupid. But I want goofy and stupid right now. They were bowling and there was quite a lot of comedy in there. I think both those teams have come across very well, particularly the Viking Raiders. And this is the first time we've actually seen anything from them in terms of character other than just trying to sound gruff. And we also had Billy Kay defeat Nikki Cross. And then we had, for me, what was the highlight of Raw, which was Rey Mysterio basically cutting a promo from his house. And sat beside him was Dominic, his son. And what was really nice at the end, as Rey finished his promo and he walked away, what you had was Dominic. And the imagery here is cool. He slid across the chair, almost like he was sliding into his dad's shoes. The symbolism, not lost on me. I love symbolism in wrestling. But they did a very good job of making Dominic look like he is going to do something in this storyline, particularly if Rey is not able to wrestle for a little while. Now, we all know the injury is not real and this is going somewhere, but it will be quite interesting to see what happens in the coming weeks. Now, we did have Rob Gronkowski announced as being released, which I didn't mention in the news section, so I'm going to do it now. Rob Gronkowski was released, and he was released because there was a clause in his contract which said if he got an NFL contract, he would be released from his WWE contract. Makes sense. He's an NFL star after all. He got released, but this week he did drop his title to R-Truth. So the 24/7 title is back in the hands of its rightful owner. We then had Nia Jax beat Kairi Sane. This is yet another match that Kairi Sane got injured by Nia Jax. There is a clip of her doing a leg drop on Kairi Sane, and to say it looks unsafe would be an understatement. But what do I know? There's people out there that probably think Nia Jax is perfectly safe. You know, it's not that she's injuring people on a weekly basis. She is. If she is, then she's unsafe. I'm whispering because some people don't want to hear it. But she is unsafe. Nia Jax got a promo basically saying that she's really the victim in all of this storyline with Asuka, which is an attempt to get heel heat, but it was just stupid. We then had Charlotte Flair defeat Asuka by count out, which, you know, for me, you really wanted to have Asuka get the win here. But seeing as Charlotte has her match first on pay-per-view or network special, it kind of makes sense that you would give Charlotte a little bit of a rub here. But eventually Asuka has to get that win over Charlotte. Anyway, the show ended with Drew McIntyre defeating MVP. One of those shows, quite frankly, where there was a couple of really good things in there. Kevin Owens comes across as a star. Drew comes across as a star. The fan interaction was quite interesting. There's quite a lot of, I think, obviously these are wrestlers they're trying to impress, so they're trying a lot to get over. But one of the things I noticed during Raw, which will become relevant if you watch Raw and NXT, is the Raw set is designed so that I call them the Tesco plastic barriers, come right up to the ramp that leads to the Titantron. And they're literally right up there, so it almost creates like a tunnel for them to come through. Yet on NXT, that is completely wide open with a lot more space there. Obviously, if you watch NXT, there's a lot more dives in and out of the ring. But again, we'll talk about NXT in a second. I want to talk about AEW show, which I've already mentioned the blood that came across from Cody Rhodes. Jimmy Corderas not happy with that. We did see Hangman Page and Kenny Omega versus Kip Sabian and Jimmy Havoc. Good solid match. I think it's one of those unfortunate things where I just don't think these two should be tag champs. Not that they're not good enough. It's just Page and Omega are two very, very good guys you would want to have at the top of your card, but instead you bring in Cage and Lance Archer and Brody Lee, who then gets slotted into the top when these guys have been there since day one. That seems to be what they were unhappy with WWE for. Maybe they've got plans here. From what I can see, these guys are going to split up and feud down the line, which should be a series of really good matches, even if the story won't make sense. Now, during this match, you did see FTR, Dax Hardwood, and Cash Wheeler, two porn star names if ever I've heard any, and they basically were in the stands watching the match, which was quite interesting. Page and Omega defeated Sabian and Havoc. A great match, particularly for an opening match on a TV show. This is the kind of thing that you want, a 20-minute non-stop action match, and there was chemistry and there was good psychology, something which is often missing from the stuff that AEW do. So no doubt in my mind that was probably the match of the night. No doubt in my mind, and probably. I didn't make that very clear. That was match of the night for me on that show. Brian Cage with his representative Taz got a win over Sean Dean, putting over the case that he's going to be ready for Jon Moxley. I don't think getting him over against jobbers is really going to help. He could be getting wins at this point over established people. Make him look good. Marco Stunt would be a great one to get him over. Luchasaurus would be a great one to get him over as well. These are guys who the fans already know and love. Colt Cabana versus Chris Jericho. I was very surprised. Colt Cabana, I haven't seen a lot of his stuff the past couple of years. So knowing that he's been trying to kind of progress himself into doing more acting and comedy, to see the level that he was performing at against Chris Jericho. This is the Colt Cabana that I would have loved to have seen instead of Scotty Goldman. He clearly has the ability. He's a big dude. There's no denying it. He's a big dude. But he can do dives. He can do somersaults. And one of the great things we had was the arrival of Orange Cassidy. Now, Orange Cassidy has been involved in segments for a long time. He was involved in a segment with Chris Jericho on this AEW, and it was a very good one. Next, we saw Big Swole versus Nyla Rose. Again, Nyla Rose is somebody that for me should be the top. I want to say top guy, and don't take that the wrong way. What I mean is, you know, the top person in that division should be Nyla Rose. Everybody should be chasing. And the person who takes Nyla Rose down should be somebody they spent time building up instead of somebody that just kind of dropped out of nowhere. Now, I've been told apparently the plan was always for Nyla Rose to lose the belt at the show that she did. But then the plans were wrong. You should be building somebody like her up instead of having to constantly reinvent them. You get people over by getting them over, not by reinventing them all the time. Ask Sean Spears. He's going through it right now as well. Now, Tony Schiavone interviewed FTR, the two porn stars, and we saw Butcher and the Blade come out to kind of try and start a fight with them. This actually happened what looks like in one of the concourses with stairs and chairs and stuff. It was well done. I would definitely say FTR are better in the ring than they are at promos. They're not bad talkers, but there was just something stunted and labored about the delivery until it became an interaction with two other wrestlers, and then it became good. That's where they seem to thrive. So I'm excited to see what they're going to do, but as yet, I don't think they've done anything to make me interested. I don't think I'm massively interested in the match against the Young Bucks. Maybe my opinion will change as we build up to Fyter Fest. Now, the TNT Championship match saw Cody versus Jungle Boy. There was blood involved. There was a lot of false finishes heading up to the end, and we did see Brandy and Dustin come down to the ring. We did see Jurassic Express hit the ring, and there was some hugs and stuff for everybody. There's quite a lot of people, not just Jimmy Corderas, Bleacher Report, several other things that I've been reading, because even on the walk to work, I'll be reading about wrestling, listening to podcasts is something I'm starting again. So I'm getting to hear people's opinion, and a lot of the opinion is just because you can bleed on TV doesn't mean you should. It is kind of the problem with AEW. They can do these things, but do they really have to? Now, because I've spoken for so long, there's some things via Ripley, Charlotte Flair that I could be talking about that happened on NXT. And I'm sorry if you're an NXT fan and you want me to talk about some of the other things that happened. Obviously, there was a multi-team match which saw Fandango return early from his elbow injury with Tyler Breeze as his partner. And they won. They're going to be facing Imperium. Imperium came out to do a little bit of a face-off. I really like Imperium. They're a traditional team. They're people who could have worked well with the Revival, particularly if the Revival were going to show up on NXT to challenge some of the young up-and-comers. But obviously that's not going to happen with them now being in AEW. What we did have after last week's victory in the triple threat match for Drake Maverick was El Hijo del Fantasma versus Drake Maverick for the NXT Cruiserweight Championship. Now, Jordan Devlin has been stripped of that title. It's not been mentioned in a while that he is the champion and this would be crowning an interim champion. Apparently the plan is still, once everything calms down, Jordan to come back and face El Hijo del Fantasma to win the title. Now, that tells you who won. El Hijo del Fantasma won. Drake Maverick is unemployed. Drake Maverick has lost his chance. Now, as Drake was leaving up the rampway, Triple H come out behind him, and there was an exchange of pleasantries. Triple H congratulated them, and you could see the emotions all over. Rockstar Spud, Drake Maverick, whatever you want to call him, the emotion on his face. Nobody's that good an actor. During the match, the way he was selling, the story they were telling was amazing. Now, El Hijo del Fantasma didn't work as a heel. He didn't cheat. There wasn't a lot of stuff in there that we shouldn't have had. We did have the two masked guys come in towards the end, and Drake Maverick went out and kind of chased them off after hitting them a few times. Because if he was going to win, he didn't want to win through cheating. So what's quite interesting there is Drake had enough integrity that he was willing to lose the match rather than win through cheating. But when we get to this little part with Triple H, there seemed almost like an unplanned element to this. It was almost like Drake wasn't told that he was going to be handed this little folder and inside was a contract. I suspect he was told that there was a contract and he was told to expect something afterwards because they maybe wanted to keep the exact details of it secret because based on his reaction, there was definitely no forewarning for him that this was going to be a contract signing that he was going to do on TV. The commentators, of course, were very happy that he got to do it. Now, one of the things that I do want to say is I mentioned before that Drake Maverick is very talented. Drake is one of those guys, I think, if he were bigger, like Adam Cole, if Adam Cole were bigger, he wouldn't be in development right now. I think if Drake Maverick was, 6'2" and could perform in the way he does, Drake Maverick would be a champion right now because he is just that damn good. Now, of course, we have a few other things to talk about. One of the things we're going to mention, of course, is the fact that this week we have the pay-per-view for NXT. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the matches that are taking place on the card. Adam Cole versus the Velveteen Dream. Now, this is one of those interesting ones. Let's be honest, right? If you're going to look at things, you're going to be thinking, well, Adam Cole, it's coming time that he should be called up. But the rumors are Velveteen Dream could be going up. So we could see Adam Cole or Velveteen Dream come out of this. This is one that's really hard to predict. Now, this is a heated one because 2 weeks ago I spoke with Zoe Styles about the fact that Velveteen Dream did that massive elbow off the top rope onto the concrete floor, and that was insane. If you're not a fan of his after this storyline, and then I just don't know what it's going to take. Obviously, WWE will have been considering the rumors and the allegations that have been pressed against Velveteen Dream. Hopefully, that can be cleared up very quickly. Hopefully, something's out of context, or hopefully Velveteen Dream is going to be free to continue with his career and he hasn't done anything wrong. But obviously, with these things kind of pending, you would think that nothing would happen. So WWE must know a little bit more than obviously we now know about the allegations made against Velveteen Dream. If you don't know what the allegations are, then he allegedly sent something to an underager. Whether he did or not is up for debate. Now, the other match that I'm looking forward to on the NXT In Your House pay-per-view is Charlotte Flair versus Io Shirai versus Rhea Ripley. Now, they haven't built this one up well enough as far as I'm concerned, but I would love to see Rhea Ripley get that belt, and I would love to see Charlotte back trying to push for a title on Raw or SmackDown. But I think that Flair's going to win that one. It has to be said. I think Flair has done enough in recent weeks to show that she's going to be involved in the NXT brand for a little while at least. Now, for me, the most over story on NXT is for the North American Championship, which is Keith Lee versus Johnny Gargano, which obviously also has Candice LeRae and my involved as well. I'd have to put my money on Johnny Gargano winning. Do I think he's going to get the title? No. I think Keith will retain the title, but Johnny Gargano will get the win. I think we might see Johnny Gargano basically talk about the fact that he should be the champion. So we have some interesting times coming up for NXT with the rumors of Dominic Dijakovic leaving. Obviously, Matt Riddle's away. There's talk of several others heading up to the main roster, including Chelsea Green. So when you look at the women's division, if you're losing Chelsea Green and you're having to ship in Charlotte Flair to fill the roster, you'd be thinking, okay, well, things must be getting a little bit light if they're starting to call people up. But then you look at the 6-women tag team match that they have: Candice LeRae, Dakota Kai, and Raquel Gonzalez versus Mia Yim, Shotzi Blackheart, and Tegan Knox. To me, I have no massive interest. This was added at the last minute. However, I think there will be a lot of good action in there. There isn't any of those girls that can't perform, so it should be interesting to see what they can do when the time comes. Now, for me, the match that I'm very interested in, the entrance is cool. As a performer, he's cool. Tommaso Ciampa versus Karrion Kross. Now, yes, Scarlett Bordeaux is a lovely-looking girl. Is he the new Mark Mero? I hope not, because there's something there. There's a talent in Karrion Kross, and he's somebody who was treated very badly by Impact. So it'd be good to see what happens. My money's on Karrion Kross getting the win, because I think it helps build him. And Ciampa getting a loss and in your house, it doesn't hurt him. It really doesn't. Now, the other thing that has it should be much bigger than it is Finn Balor versus Damian Priest. Finn Balor has to get the win here to build him up. But for me, I do think that there's going to be quite a lot of violence in that match. It's going to be one of those almost lights out type of matches that, for me, could end up stealing the thunder from for what a lot of people are concerned is the main event, Adam Cole versus Velveteen Dream. It's a backlot brawl, which, if you remember, Goldust and Roddy Piper's one, that should be quite an entertaining one. It looks like it's going to be quite cinematic. There's a wrestling ring in the parking lot surrounded by cars with their lights on. Does that sound like something that happened in WCW, perhaps? Hopefully done a lot better than that. But they were still filming that up until 1:30 in the morning on the 28th of May. So that tells you exactly how much detail they've put into it. Now, I know this isn't the news section, but one of the things that's kind of cropped up this week is that the audience for the NXT Raw and SmackDown shows are actually doing like 12-hour days. Now, okay, a lot of us are doing long days where we're standing up, but these guys are going in early in the morning and they're there till late at night just so they can be audience for the crowd. Something has to be said for the amount of energy these guys are putting into it, because I haven't seen anybody looking bored or looking like they're not interested. In saying I haven't seen anybody looking bored and uninterested, we did see that at the Double or Nothing pay-per-view when they cut to Mike Tyson and Mike Tyson's sat with the TNT Championship, which is still ugly. And he sat with the TNT Championship and he's going, oh. Sometimes that's how I feel about AEW. And it's not that it's boring as much as by the time you get to the main event, you've seen everything. So you're just kind of like, now I want to go sleep. Whereas wrestling should make you feel how I felt at the end of NXT, where I was wiping away a tear. I'm having to pretend to my wife that I'm not crying because a fake contest on a wrestling show has got me to react in that way. But that's how wrestling is. The pay-per-view is, of course, this weekend. I'm looking forward to seeing it. There isn't a match on there that isn't at least going to offer something in the way of excitement. It's going to be interesting to see. There was conversations that the pay-per-views are going to be just over 2 hours. So with that being said, expect one or two of these matches at the weekend to go a little bit shorter than normal, especially if they're trying to make the pay-per-views shorter during the pandemic. But as far as I can see, the WWE have got a very good show coming up for us in your house. They also have had some very good things happening on TV over the past few weeks. The problem is they've also had the Jeff Hardy incident, and they've also had some really awful booking and matches that shouldn't have happened. And they've also had Nia Jax on there. Let's be fair. It's not that I'm disliking Nia Jax. I just don't understand why, again, somebody comes back from injury and gets thrown into the title picture. I'll never understand it. I've never understood it when it used to happen back under Vince Russo as well. This is not critiquing Nia Jax. This is critiquing the booking, ignoring the fact that she's hurting people. The booking makes no sense, and that's something that I'm a big believer in when I'm watching wrestling. I want things to make sense. Like when The Shield turned babyface, it made sense. They also did it in a very clever way, where they physically turned in the ring. That, for me, beautiful symbolism, like Dominic and Rey Mysterio. Beautiful symbolism. The fact that, and this is probably something that nobody else thinks about, and that's fine. If nobody else wants to think about it, I will. When Drake Maverick was walking out after losing his match, he was walking backwards because he didn't want to turn his back on NXT. And for me, that's how you tell a story. Probably that's not what it was. But for me, that's symbolically what I saw. He didn't want to turn his back on NXT. And he walked out almost with his head held high. He could have got the cheat win. He could have taken advantage of something, and he didn't. So even if he was leaving, he was leaving with his head held high. And that's something that, even if that was his last show, that would have been a great way for him to go out. Now, hopefully, you can tell from the fact that I've stopped the background, the lighting's changing. This is kind of, this is where things are a little bit different. Now, we were meant to have a three-way episode today. Stuart Murphy was meant to show up. We were meant to hopefully do something that was going to be entertaining. Now, Stuart Murphy asked us if he could take part in the episode, having seen the episode that took place last week with JJ Andrews and myself. He thought it would be quite interesting, or at least that's what we were told. About an hour before the show, he decided he wasn't going to do the show anymore, but he had already sent us a parcel. I'm not entirely sure why he opted not to take part in the show. Nerves, perhaps, or perhaps he just, it was always the plan where he was going to send what he did in. Now, to me, what was sent in seems quite okay. There's nothing bad there. But apparently it opened a can of worms for JJ, and I've tried reaching out to JJ, and I've asked him several times through WhatsApp, through Messenger, if I can get some further comment on why he's so angry. I've asked him if he's okay with me broadcasting what happened in our interview. I can't get a reply from him, so I've kind of racked my brain all night, just thinking about whether I should or shouldn't air this interview. Unfortunately, I want to air it. I don't think that JJ in a couple of weeks is probably going to feel the same way he does. Maybe there's something going on that's making him angry, which, if it is, then that's fine. But when I look at it, I'm definitely going to have to cut. This is one of the only times we're going to cut something. We're going to censor it, because there comes a point where the anger gets a little bit too much. And whilst we're all about having fun, and I've introduced you to a few people, Gordy, Zoe Styles, I've introduced you to JJ as well in recent weeks. One of the things about doing this show is it's trying to be entertaining. It's trying to keep each other busy during the lockdown. So I don't want to see any of my friends being angry. So clearly there's going to be more that comes out about why JJ is very angry with Stuart Murphy. I'm going to air the footage because I've reached out to Stuart Murphy for some comments as well, and he says he wants to wait and see what happens. He hasn't seen the footage because I was waiting on hearing back from JJ, but now we're kind of hitting the deadline time. I'm just going to put it in the show, and I'm going to give Murphy a chance to reply, and we'll see what happens, because I have no idea why JJ would be this angry. I've never known him to be that kind of guy. He may swear or tell you to F off or whatever, but I've never known him to be the guy that kind of reacts the way that he did today. So if you are of a nervous disposition, I know they say this sometimes on TV. I'm not saying this to get a reaction. I'm not saying this because I've scripted something. And you can see that there is no script here. I'm kind of just talking. We're in a position where I probably shouldn't air it, but I kind of have to. So whatever the fallout is from this over the next couple of weeks should be quite interesting at the very least. I have no idea what's going to happen. There is something mentioned during the interview, which hopefully I'm going to get more about that, even if we don't get more about the negativity, which is Caledonian Wrestling Federation, which up until today I'd never heard of. But as far as I can tell, it's a new Scottish-based wrestling promotion that appears to be run by Stuart Murphy. If we can find out anything more, all the better. But just remember, whatever happens, I'm probably going to air it, because I think that's what this should be about. If these guys are angry with each other, let's find out why they're angry. Let's treat this like therapy. That's what it's going to be. The next couple of weeks, we'll figure out what the hell is going on with these two, and I'll show you, because I'm curious. So if I'm curious, you might be as well. One of the things we're going to talk about, we're going to just fire straight into it. You have an opinion about this first segment on SmackDown, where the car hit Elias and Jeff Hardy was arrested under suspicion of drink driving. Having a personal history of being arrested for things like this, Matt Hardy tweeted that he was very glad to be working for AEW in light of this segment. What do you think about this segment for SmackDown and for wrestling as a whole?
Like I said last week, it's the kind of situation where it's bad taste. Like with Hardy's past, he's not had the cleanest past. No one really has got the cleanest past. But like I said, if he's fine doing it, then so it be. But I personally do not like the idea of using someone's addicted history in a storyline in the professional light.
I mean, I'll bring this up here because I'm wearing their T-shirt. I'm wearing Road Warriors T-shirt, and they did the same thing with Hawk on Raw, and Vince Russo was slaughtered for it because it's exploiting someone's personal issues to create real TV. Now, for me, what I think is quite telling. Now, they say that it's not related to the Jeff Hardy story, but Chris DeJoseph, the fat, oily, naked guy, he has been fired by WWE. Could this potentially be as a result of the backlash to this segment?
Of course it could. As you say, any history of any professional athlete, wrestler, what have you, their past comes back and it could trip them out and cause them to go off the rails again.
Now, one of the things, if we're going to talk about something that's negative, let's talk about something positive. Now, we talked about this in the group chat.
Bear with me a second.
This is one of those things about when you do things live. You never quite know when somebody's going to have something else to do. But what I do want to talk about, and hopefully you can hear me, is the segment with Drake Maverick from NXT. Now, they did something earlier in the day, which I personally thought was amazing. They had Drake Maverick cut a promo, and he was just outside in what looks like a theme park. But he's outside, and he's cutting a promo, and he suddenly looks at the camera, and he's like, hey, look, I can even look directly into the camera, which is a slight nod to the fact Buff Bagwell, right before his first match in WWF against Booker T, was told, you can't look directly at the camera. And Buff Bagwell was like, that's basically 90% of my act, is looking at the camera and saying, I'm buff, I'm the stuff. So he was kind of alluding to the fact that, hey, I leave the company tomorrow anyways. I don't care what I do. But when it came to the match, Drake Maverick, as a jaded wrestling fan who's been very critical of a lot of things, it got me. I had a tear in my eye, and I had to pretend that I'd been cutting onions or something because the wife was looking at me all funny, and I'm just like, this is great storytelling. There's a point where Drake gets powerbombed outside the ring, and when he lands, you hear him scream like it's absolute torture. And when he's put in the Boston Crab, he turns to the referee and he's like, don't you dare! I don't give up! Do not dare! And as he reaches for the rope, you just see he looks like he's going to cry. So when he gets beat, it's incredible. And obviously there's no fans there, so I think a lot of the moment wasn't quite as big as it could have been.
It was taken away from.
Yeah, but as he was leaving, he's walking up the ramp and he gets that little chance to say goodbye. That second where Triple H walked out beside him, I'm telling you, the tears rolled down my eye. I kind of expected the contract to be offered at some point, but to see that's what wrestling's about, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm just glad Drake Maverick got another contract. Like, he's such a good wrestler. Like, in that match, he just showed what he can do.
And here's the thing. So I saw him live in Aberdeen, and I'm speaking with producer Zoe Styles when it came time to watch that yesterday before I went to work. And you know what? She said the same thing. Drake Maverick was the best thing on the live show when we went to see them. Yeah, we were excited to see Seth Rollins versus Bray Wyatt in a street fight. But the tag team match where he played Shelton Benjamin's tag team partner, and Shelton didn't want to be his tag partner, there was so much comedy, but you weren't laughing in a way that almost put him down. It was as if you were also kind of rooting for him. So when he lost, you were like, oh, he might be a bit of an idiot, but I kind of wanted him to win. So that's one of those things that really I think there's some good stuff and there's some bad stuff in wrestling, and I think those 2 points kind of cover it up. Now, I did put up on the Facebook page that today was going to be a three-way. However, we've had to do the show a little bit differently because the person who was going to be in the three-way has other plans. So what we're going to do is we were sent a parcel here at Headlocks and Headphones, and it came directly from Stuart Murphy, or as I like to call him, Stuart Not Girly. Now, I have no idea what's in it, so I'm just going to rip it open here. I'm not going to put my address out there because I just don't know. And, okay, so I have no idea what this is. So what is this? What has he sent me? So clearly you know what this is, right?
What a dick. What a dick.
So is there a specific reason he didn't show up today? Is this the reason?
Fucking prick. It must be. He has told me that him and I, can come together to create the logo for the new wrestling company.
Okay, so you guys have a wrestling company that you're starting?
Hopefully, yes.
Okay, so why has he sent me the logo? Was that what the plan was for the three-way today? Because I know he asked for this. He asked to do a three-way. That would be me, you, and him. So was his plan to reveal the logo, or do you think he's decided to reveal the logo and getting us together for it?
What a dick. What a fucking dick. He's done this to piss me off. He's done this because back last year, he promised me a match that in the show that was meant to happen the end of last year. The show was cancelled due to outside. This year, he has promised me shit that he has not fucking delivered.
So what has he promised you?
He comes up with this. He goes behind my back on something he said. He said that we can work together on the sign, the logo for Caledonian Wrestling Federation. He does. I'm gonna fucking kill him.
So what? Other than this, what has he promised you? Because clearly, this is just the straw that broke the camel's back. So what has he promised you that he hasn't delivered?
He's promised me my first match. He said, get a little bit fitter, all right? I got a little bit fitter. You'll get your match. I got a little bit fitter. No match. I've wanted this moment for so fucking long, and he takes it away from me. He's a fucking piece of shit.
So I got a message about an hour and 20 minutes before this show was going to be recorded, and he had other plans.
Other plans?
Well, he's known about this show for a week, and today he has other plans that he has to do. So do you have something that you want to say to him right now? Because obviously this seems to have pissed you off. The fact that this logo was sent to me.
That should have been from both of us. That should have been mine and his ideas, not just his ideas. Murphy, when you see this, and I know you will fucking see this, give me my fucking match. I don't care what I've got to do. I've gotten into shape. I've lost a bit of weight. I've got that little bit fitter. I've done my part. Do your fucking part. Give me my match. And if you don't, who knows what the fuck is going to happen.